Hi, I'm Dr. Jayne Gardner, and today our podcast, Best Job Ever, is about finding leaders who have found that sweet spot of the best job ever and interviewing them about how they got there and how they keep it. But I'd like to start with acknowledging my two sponsors, John Mack, Joel Patterson from The Vested, a software company in Plano, are sponsoring this. And it was with Joel first told me this term, best job ever. And what it meant to him was that at the end of a career, he wanted any employee that had ever worked for him to be able to, when their grandchildren said, Grandpa or Grandma, what's the best job you ever had in your career? He wanted them to say, The Vested. And that's where we came up with this title for a podcast, because it has just helped his company grow tremendously. I know that he just quadrupled his value in 1.5 years with this kind of culture. So I want to thank both John Mack and Joel Patterson for their sponsorship. Now, I'd like to introduce a friend of mine, a respected colleague, someone that I can't wait for you to hear her story of best job ever. I'd like to introduce Lynn Dunlap Reagan. She is Senior Vice President at LeaseLock, a company in Plano of about 80 employees?
80 employees.
Okay. And Lynn has worked for various sizes. She's worked in huge corporations, smaller ones, medium. But I'd like for her to share your story, because it's been a tremendous journey from her setting a goal with me how many years ago? 3 or 4 years ago?
More than 5 years ago.
5 years ago, she set this goal that she eventually want to be a senior vice president. And here she is. Congratulations on that promotion. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Jayne.
How did you do it? You got the best job ever now.
I have the best job ever, I have to say.
Well, good. And of course, that doesn't mean that you won't be striving for another goal. But I love the presence of right now in this moment, you're feeling that win, that
excitement. Yes, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about your best job ever.
Well, my best job ever now is really attributed to having also the best boss ever, right? Someone who believes in you, someone who allows you to show up as your authentic self, sees the potential in you. And then for me, emulating that for my team as well, and having them there, being able to show up as their unique selves. Beautiful. And then us being able to create and do things, and being allowed to be creative and create whatever we need to do to make it a best employee experience as well as customer experience.
You're talking about such a great culture, and I love that. So what I'd like to have you begin with, though, is nearly everyone I coach comes to me in that moment of turn when they're really down.
Yes.
They either have a crisis going on or a crisis going on inside of them. So tell us your moment when, if you don't mind sharing that story, that moment of, when you thought, I guess you were thinking I could never do this. I don't know.
Oh yeah, no, that's right. That was about almost 5 years ago. And I was with a large corporation for about 16 years. And, kind of stuck in a role, right? So I was stuck in a role, Yes, I was stuck in a role for more than 7 years. And they started to close down our division. Oh. So what happened was, they gave us notice, which was great, but, you started becoming angry, and resentful. Anyone who's gone through a layoff probably knows how you feel. At the time, I'm in my early 40s. I'm like, what's going to happen? And you start questioning your value. Like, what do I bring to the table? Who's ever going to hire me? Why are they getting rid of me? Is there something wrong with me? So you start questioning all that stuff, and you go through a whole slew of emotions where it goes from sadness to anger to grief to all of that. And when I met you at the time, we were going through the whole Gardner method, and I was, a little angry, right? And feeling down about myself, hey, I worked there 16 years and now I'm getting laid off. This is not fair, but now where am I going to go? But at the beginning of the process, I was very angry. But at the end of the process, I said, you know what? Thank you.
You were
Thank you for letting, yes, I was grateful. I was like, you know
grateful. I
what?
remember
Thank
that.
you for laying me off and pushing me out because I was very comfortable and I probably wouldn't have pushed myself
Yeah,
where I need to go.
You weren't in the sweet spot.
Was not in the sweet spot at all.
What you could do.
Of what you could do. And I would have, I was justifying, it was comfortable, blah, blah, blah. And then going through the whole process of understanding who I actually am, all, the limiting beliefs that I had that was holding me back. At the end of the whole process, I was grateful and thankful that they pushed me out and that I got laid off and went through the whole, understanding who I really was, right? And then understanding who the conditioned self was and how that was holding me back. And that really helped me propel into my next role and accelerated my whole, actually, it was like the lowest point of my life, but it opened up space. Like they always say, when things open up space, when you lose something, another door opens, and it really allowed space for me to then blossom into having the coaching training, becoming the leader that I wanted, pursuing my dreams, and realizing, anything is possible. I don't have to be stuck in the same position for 7 years. I can go to a new company and bring my talents there and show up who I really am.
Thank you. I'm emotional because I know there's so many people out there that have either gone through that and still struggle, or because it is such a rejection. I don't care what anybody says or how they couch the phrase of, well, it laid you off because of this. You are being rejected.
You're being rejected. And even though most of the department was being laid off, you still take it personally. And it hurts so bad. And I remember, going up to interviews and not knowing, I was like stuck in that position and not really knowing, am I marketing? Am I customer success? What am I? I'm not really fitting into any of these boxes out here. And I was interviewing and there was one job that I was really close to and I didn't get it. And I remember crying to my mother and the feeling of being so low and feeling I'm never going to find anything.
Of rejection.
Yes, another rejection. So then you have another rejection. But those low points are really pivotal in your life and that really help you. Sometimes you have to hit that rock bottom to really start shifting and understanding and learning and growing and push you to where you really need to go.
I know somebody out there needed to hear that. Maybe me.
We all do, right?
But there's always low points, whether it's
always low
career
points.
or something that we have to, it's that emotional set point.
Yes.
You remember me talking about
that?
that?
I love that. Yes. And being in that lowest set point, then you're going to attract all the negative and you're not going to attract it. But then identifying being grateful. So like being grateful, you know what? Thank you for pushing me out. And thank you for giving me a severance. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to go through coaching. Thank you for letting me allow this time to get my authentic self. Thank you for pushing me to get that next job. And being in that set point shifts everything.
You got the job.
And you got the job.
Yeah, I love it. Well, tell us one of your stories, and this is vulnerable, so I've already asked you for permission for that. But tell us your story of what your limiting belief was, and kind of, my process takes you back to childhood when you first heard and established that limiting belief. So tell us that little story.
Yeah, I would say it probably was, I felt like I was not smart enough. And maybe because when I was a child, I would daydream a lot or, get caught up in some of my visions or my daydreams and things like that, or I didn't score well on standardized tests. So multiple things have led to this limiting belief where I just didn't feel smart enough or good enough. And when going through all of that, I started identifying, well, what were the causes of that? And then instead of focusing on why that was understanding it, and then being able to do like the affirmations, right? Or anything going understanding like that's not true. That's a story I made up in my head. And that's not true. That's not who I am. I am creative. And I started focusing on the things that I am. I'm a visionary. I'm creative. I might not have the highest IQ out of everybody, but I do have a high EQ, right? And balancing all the things. So instead of focusing on the things that held me back, start focusing on the qualities that would bring me forward.
Oh, I love it. I love your emphasis on authenticity.
Oh, yes.
You can find that real self within you who is smart and who has a dynamic that maybe you'd never even thought of in the sense of smart and emotions.
Right, exactly.
Oh, I love that. So how did the conditioned self, I knew is one term that I introduced to you. Remember, that was the part of you that said, no, you can't do this. You're not smart.
Right, you're not smart enough, right?
Yeah. And then learning how the authentic self within you, once it began to take over, how did that change you?
I think it was with the authentic self really uncovering and understanding who I really was. Because the conditioned self always will take over and tell you all the negative things, bring that fear into place. But as you start discovering your authentic self and honoring who you really are and understanding that, so it's not like an overnight process, right? It's going through understanding those limiting beliefs, understanding your natural gifts, understanding all of those great things, and then overcoming it, and then seeing the difference between the two, where I can be anything I want to be. Anything is possible. Why am I limiting myself to this? If I want to be a VP, why can't I be a VP? What's holding me back on that? And you start identifying it. And what I loved about that whole process going through of identifying the two is, the conditioned self's always going to come back, right? But it's controlling it, right? And then not having it dictate and tell the story for you. You're in control of your narrative. But once you understand who you are and you become confident, you start showing up as your authentic self, embracing the gifts that you have. And you know what? Maybe if I'm not great at doing accounting or this or that, that doesn't mean that I'm not smart. It just means that's someone else's gift. And why don't I focus on the things that I'm really good at? Because that's going to give me energy and help me move forward, and give those tasks or have someone else do those tasks and honor them for their gifts, and show up that way and not feel bad about something that I'm not good at, but focusing on the things that I am good at.
Oh, that's so important. And it's so challenging,
Right.
Because we all know we have those talents sometimes, but we haven't put them in the sense of our presence, and just learning to be comfortable with that person. And then it's your behavior all of a sudden. I know you've told me before that once you got in those new beliefs, they became who you were.
Exactly.
And then it became easier to do all this stuff as a leader in a natural state, and it just is attractive.
Yep, and then people start being attracted to you because it's the light that you have, or it's an energy. It's really increasing your vibration. I don't want to be too woo-woo here, but when you increase all of that, people start getting attracted to you. And I noticed when I was starting to interview, when I was trying to fit into their job description and try to fit into their box, I was like not confident because I was not sure of it. I knew that who I wasn't really myself. But when I showed up to the interviews and said, okay, this is your job description, I have these type of attributes, but I also have these 10 over here, and really claiming who I am and what I believe in and what excites me, they saw that energy rise, and it shifted everything.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for the testimonial.
Oh, yeah, no, I absolutely love it.
It.
I have to say, ever since we met 5 years ago, I wanted to be a VP, and I was putting even limits on that and didn't even think.
Yes.
But it was that time where it really started to accelerate my whole career.
Well, and I know you have children. I know you have a marriage that you're tending to, all of those things. So it is difficult, I think, for women our age or any age to have all of those responsibilities.
Yes.
And then still feel like we have something to offer to business. So, well, this is a loaded question. You can tell I've had this going. But tell me, I'm always interested, what coaching has done for you to take you from that being stuck and, moving up. I know you've been to, this is your third company, and then ending up as a senior vice president. How has coaching facilitated that or helped you?
Well, the whole process. So not only the coach. So before you even I went through your coaching.
Yeah.
You had to do the Gardner method, right? Before, didn't tackle your own demons. And I think that was brilliant because there were so many things that I maybe was hiding. That I was scared to bring out. I was not being truthful to myself. So going through a lot of that and identifying the things that were holding me back, or the things like I said, like one of my top strengths is futuristic, right?
I remember
so
that.
It's a visionary, so I can see things. However, when I would say things in meetings, people didn't understand what I was saying, so they would dismiss me. And then I would realize, oh, that's not a thing. That's not a bad thing. It's actually people are misunderstanding me, so I need to share other things with them to help them see what I see. And so understanding who I was through that whole process, what's holding me back, and going forward. So that's when I said earlier, going through those interviews. When I interviewed at my last company, I was honest, and I was like, hey, this is what the job description is. I have this, I have that. But here's what also I bring to the table. I love leading people. I love focusing on the employee experience. And I remember the lady even asked me, because I was so focused on the employee experience, she's like, so why are you going for this customer success job? Would you rather go into an HR and be, a coach there, or learning and development? I'm like, I would, but I really love the business side of it. I love the action. I love the business reviews. I love doing all that kind of stuff too. So I want to infuse it and have the intersection of employee experience and customer experience. And that's really where my sweet spot is. And that she was like, oh, wow. And that was when everything shifted. And then that job, I showed up who I was. I didn't hide the things or, the things that I thought, ooh, I don't know if the corporate world's ready for this. Because remember, I told you one of my goals was to infuse mindfulness. Well, I'm really into the mindfulness. I'm into all of that kind of stuff. And actually, we brought it to the table there. We had meditation. We brought in meditations. We brought in all different things because we were honored each other and showed up who we were, and just having the confidence to do that. And I remember one of the things too, we talked about this, one of my goals in your class was I wanted to open a spiritual wellness center in Richardson. Remember this?
I remember that. The trees is what I remember.
The trees, yes. It has lots of trees and it's close to me in Plano.
Yeah, this vision.
The vision of like, okay, and the purpose of it was going to infuse mindfulness and help people discover their gifts and coach, in the real world and in corporate worlds, because that's where I wanted to help elevate.
That now.
And so I remember sitting there in my boss's office at the time, and I said, yeah, my whole goal is to, one of my dreams was to open a spiritual wellness center and infuse mindfulness into organizations and do coaching. And they're like, well, you're doing that here. And I was like, what? Oh. And then I looked out the window and there was all the trees and I'm like, I'm in Richardson. I'm here. That's right. I'm doing it. And it wasn't like I had to, go out and do my own business. I was doing it. And so it's not about the how it gets done. It's just holding that vision and understanding what is it that I want to do. I want to help people. I want them to drive that. I want to drive engagement, help organizations. So it might manifest differently than what you originally intended, but it's funny how things just work out.
Oh, thank you for that reminder, because the how, we can get so off into how to do it when we just need to focus on who we are and the ability that we have to do that and let the universe kind of send us signals
exactly.
and what to do. Right. It's so much easier that way.
It's so much easier that way. And you taught us that too. And I'm like, I didn't understand it at first. I was like, well, how? Okay, but all right. Let me go with it. All right, let me go with it. And it just happens that way. And so things happen even better than you expected.
Oh, beautiful. Well, okay, before we close, I'd like for you to tell us 3 wishes you have for anyone in the audience. Well, that's sitting there. Maybe they are not employed. Maybe they're stuck in a position they don't want to be and they want to move up.
Okay.
And I know we talked about this right before we went on the air, and we came up with, 10 things.
Right, exactly.
So I don't know what 3 you pick. It'll be hard, but just give the audience some pointers on what you wish for them in the future in their positions.
Well, I think after this, the top one's going to be discover your authentic self.
I love it.
And it's not an overnight process, right? So like I was fortunate enough to go through your method, the Gardner method, right? And that was 3-6 month process right there, going through those limiting beliefs. Taking assessments is another great way to get different perspectives. There's various assessments out there, strengths, Clifton Strengths, DISC, Myers-Briggs, but everything gives you a perspective and understanding of who you are at the core and helps you show up. And then don't limit your dreams. So like I said earlier, I even started limiting, even going through and knowing that anything's possible, right? And don't limit it, but you still limit it. But don't limit it. Just know that anything's possible when you don't have those limiting beliefs.
Absolutely.
And the third one is find a job where you feel like you're giving value. You feel that you're valued and that you fit in. And it's a culture that honors and respects you. So if you have to hide in that culture or pretend you're someone that you're not, or you're not feeling valued, think about it. Go find the job. There's jobs out there, and find that, because when you are in a job where you feel valued and you're embracing your authentic self and your gifts, time flows by. And not only is it a win-win, it's a win for you, it's a win for the organization. You're exponentially more productive, and everyone around you, your spirits are lifted and you're more positive, you're more engaged, and your family's happier, you're happier, your colleagues are happier, and it just has this positive ripple effect where the whole environment around you is just a much better place. So you're spending 40 hours a week, you might as well do it somewhere where you enjoy and where you feel valued.
Well, I think that's what John Mack and Joel Patterson would say to anyone right now, is that culture has become the most important thing that they as leaders try to give their people, is that they feel valued and important.
Yes.
And they've done that so many years that now their people have high performance and they don't leave. Attrition
Exactly.
rate's nothing.
Oh, yes, and retention. We didn't even touch on that, too.
yeah.
The retention rate drops, too,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's all about that environment. It's the boss. So best job ever is also having the best boss ever.
Absolutely.
That is absolutely key. And, there's that old saying, people don't leave organizations, they leave leaders, too. So
Bosses
having that,
sometimes,
it's
yeah.
all of that, So
Yeah.
having that whole,
that's beautiful.
Yes, whole equation really helps.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And
Thank you so much.
I got to remind you of something before we sign
Yes.
off. The first time I met you, I told you this was a gift, and I remember you kind of brushed it off. But you have such high energy. And so your authentic self is so energetic and magnetic.
Oh.
It's like I can see why you're a senior vice president.
well, thank
it's
you
just
so
such
much.
a great way to get there, is by using your presence to get to that desired goal. I'm very proud of you for
Well,
that.
thank you, and thank you for helping me get there.
It was a lot of fun.
And going and being there at my lowest point and really helping me shift and getting to where I am. So thank you for that.
Yeah, as a coach, and you're a coach too, I know sometimes the best thing we can do for those people when, because I've been in those same low spots too, and it was so beautiful when my coach saw I was up here and was holding that for me when I couldn't see it.
When you can't even see it yourself.
So I think that's what you do for people, and we appreciate you.
Yes, and you had that too with a coach who saw you writing the books, right?
Yeah,
And now you're on your second
story.
book?
That's it. We've got all these stories.
Yes.
That we can go on with forever. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I
Yeah,
appreciate
I've enjoyed
it. Thank
talking
you.
to you, catching up.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
appreciate it. I'd like to tell you that this Best Job Ever podcast is continuing, and we will have the next podcast is on the 23rd of February at 11 o'clock with an attorney from the Mid-Cities, Ed Cox. He is the owner of the Cox Law Firm. And he is going to tell his story about Best Job Ever and his authentic self and how he found that authentic self through having a stroke. He's going to tell this really dramatic story about how a stroke changed his whole life. So tune in for that. And then soon I want to interview Joel Patterson, John Mack, about how they quadrupled that size through their culture.